you also made a video on your perspective on how maybe the Federal Reserve, kind of getting back to the Fed as well, could actually start buying gold. And now this is contrary to, this kind of comes as a surprise to a lot of people. But your perspective is, why would the Fed want to buy gold?
Well, the Fed doesn't want to buy gold, but they might be forced into buying gold at some point. And so the government, the central banks, the Fed, whatever, they're never going to wake up and decide to want to live within their means. Like, that's just not going to happen. So they're going to be forced into it. So they'll never choose to go back to a sound money system, only by force. But right now, the Fed has basically been throwing every tool in their arsenal to try to get inflation. And so they've, in 2008, they started doing quantitative easing, QE. Now in 2020, they've created all types of 3- and 4-letter programs where they're basically buying everything, right? They're buying the bonds, they're buying the stocks. I mean, now they're sending money directly out to people. They're doing everything they can to get that inflation, but they're still not getting it. As a matter of fact, a week or two ago, they said, look, the 2% target is kind of off right now. We're just going to go for an average over multiple years. We're just going to, they said, quote, let it run hot. Like, we're doing everything we can. And they even talked about the, pinning the rates. They're this kind of yield curve control where they're not going to allow rates to go up. And how do you not let rates go up? I mean, it's a free market. Well, you do that by buying every single treasury that comes out of the government. So basically, they've used up every tool in their arsenal. They don't really have many more tools left. And one of the only kind of Hail Mary chances they might have would be to buy gold to get that price to rise, to get that inflation that they want so bad.
How would that play out? Like, why would buying gold increase inflation?
Well, I mean, a lot of it depends on what they're looking at for inflation. So the Fed uses something called CPI, right, the Consumer Price Index, and it's somewhat of a moving target. And so they continue to change how they measure that. If we look at it in how they measured it in the 80s, if we use that same measurement today, we have like 18% inflation. But they, of course, say we can't even get 2%. And so one of the ways that you look at it is things like priced in gold, the dollar's priced in gold, et cetera. So if we can get the price of gold to go up, then it shows that inflation that they need.
Definitely. And I guess with respect to investing, what are some of the first signs that people should see that would kind of signal that maybe the Fed would be ready to do this?
I mean, I think the signs are already there, right? Like I said, they just met a week or two ago and said, look, we're abandoning everything. They said, we're pegging the rates. He already said, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell already said, we're not even thinking about raising rates. He said, we'll do whatever it takes. He already said multiple things, but they're continuing to say more. So as I said a couple weeks ago, they said, look, we're not even getting anywhere close. So what we're going to do now is we're going to just put rates down to zero and hold it forever, not forever, but a couple years, 3 to 5 years. And like I said, we're going to let it run hot. So they've had this target of 2% and they're not able to achieve it. So now they say the 2% target's off. We're going to now look at like an average of years. And so each one of these talks gets us closer to that point. When will we know when we get there? I mean, it's kind of like if you're driving in a car and you got directions to go somewhere and they didn't tell you how long it would take you to get there. But when you get to this mailbox, you hang a right, and when you get to that old billboard, you hang a left. So I don't know if it's going to be 30 minutes or an hour to get there, but I know the signs, and eventually when I see the mailbox, I turn right and I'm almost there. So it's kind of like that. We're just kind of looking at these signs, and as soon as they're out of options, that might be their only option left. The other option is that they just continue to print to infinity and they just ruin the currency. And that's probably the most likely scenario, is that the central banks continue to print until the currency is just completely ruined. That they don't have a choice. The Fed can't go backwards at this point. As soon as they stop injecting money, the whole system is going to crash super fast. So what they're going to have to continue to do is continue to print money until the currency is destroyed. And then this is where it gets interesting. And then at that point, there's no trust left in the currency. And if there's no trust left in the currency, how do they get people to use it again? Somehow they have to reinstill trust. And that could be almost impossible to do. And maybe the only option to reinstill trust into a currency would be to back it with gold.
And if we're looking at the if we're looking at kind of a dollar crash, the price of gold then would be way higher, because even today at the amount of dollars that are in existence, you can't back it with the current price of gold.
Well, you could, right? I mean, it depends on how much backing they want to do. So is it 1% backed? Or is it 50% backed, or is it 100% backed? So if they were to go based off of what the last reporting of the Fed was of how much gold they have, which most people don't believe that's an accurate number because they won't audit it. But even if they have what they said they have, I think it would push gold up to, $50,000 or $100,000, something like that. Most likely it'd probably go to a 25% backed or 50% backed number. And at that point, it might be not with the Fed. It might be more of like an IMF or BIS type move, where maybe the SDR baskets now become the currency, and the SDR baskets are backed by gold. So you take all the gold in the world, divided by all the money in the world, you come up with a new number, decide how much backing you want, whether it's 50% or 100%, and you end up, at a $50,000 or $100,000 price of ounce per gold.
Now, one of the things you've talked about as well is really looking at relative valuations, because if we get into a perspective of $50,000 gold, $100,000 gold, the dollar is probably not going to be worth a lot. So that's a huge number. People might think, oh, that's great. But how much more is gold? Much more value does gold actually have? So what are some of the indicators that you're going to look at as we see the gold market gold to continue to rise? What are you going to look at to kind of signal, okay, it's time to maybe move into a different kind of asset?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I think that's where most people don't understand how things actually work, because everyone looks at everything's priced in dollars. Even in the world, they look at price in dollars because it's the reserve asset, right? So it's like, oh, home prices got more expensive. Maybe they didn't. Maybe it just takes more dollars to buy those houses, right? And so really what you want to look at is purchasing power, right? So, and that's kind of what the Fed does with their CPI is what's the purchasing power of the dollar? What's the purchasing power of gold? So for example, let's just say today a barrel of oil goes for, I don't even know, $30, $30 or $40 today. And how many ounces of gold is that, right? It's a couple grams of gold or whatever, right? So you look at different assets priced in different things. And so you talk about when gold goes to 10,000, what will it buy versus what will 10,000 US dollars buy? So you're looking at the relative purchasing power. But I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, at $10,000, the dollar itself went down in value and is just kind of destroyed, doesn't buy a lot.
Definitely. Are there any specific indicators or ratios like gold versus the stock market or gold versus silver that you're kind of looking at kind of to value gold and its purchasing power?
Well, I think you look at it to a basket of goods, right? So how many ounces of gold would it take to buy the medium home price? How many ounces of gold would it take to buy the Dow? How many ounces of gold would it take to buy the S&P? How many ounces of gold would it take to buy oil? And so you're kind of looking at it as a basket of goods. And this is really the problem that happened when we got off the gold standard. And so everything in this world has a standard unit of account. We all know what an inch is. We all know what a mile is. We all know what a centimeter, a mile, a liter, a gallon. We have these standard units of measure. So at my house, I want 9-foot ceilings. At your house, you want 10-foot ceilings. Okay, that's good, but at least we know what a foot is, right? We know what a degree is, a temperature, right? All that. We don't know what a standard unit of measure is for wealth, for value. Now we did. Everything was pegged to gold. But in 1971, the whole world came off of that. And today, all value is subjective. And that's the big problem. I think that history books will be written and they're going to look back at this time and go, what the heck were they thinking, right? We all things in the world need a standard unit of measure so we can all communicate. And we don't have that for value. So, I mean, to your question, all the value of everything is constantly sliding. And that's why you can't peg it to any one thing. You're trying to look at it compared to a basket of things to get a good picture.